What if history's darkest secrets were hiding in the depths of our oceans? Scattered across the seafloor, forgotten World War II vessels rest as silent witnesses to one of humanity's deadliest conflicts. This is shocking, as deep-sea explorers off the coast of Norway just made a discovery that left them pale with horror. But that's only the beginning. From mysterious disappearances to classified missions, these submerged war machines hold secrets that were never meant to surface. What terrifying truth lurks inside the rusted hull of a submarine that vanished without a trace 80 years ago? Let's dive into the chilling reality of what happens when the forgotten vessels of war finally reveal their cargo. The vanished U-boat. For decades, naval historians had been puzzled by the mysterious fate of German submarine U-977. Official records showed it had surrendered in Argentina in August 1945, 3 months after Germany's defeat, following an unprecedented underwater journey from Europe. But mounting evidence suggested this wasn't the complete story. U-977's official history never added up, explains maritime historian Dr. Klaus Weber. The crew that surrendered in Argentina was only half the submarine's full complement. Captain Heinz Schäfer claimed the missing men had disembarked in Norway before their Atlantic crossing. But Norwegian records never confirmed this. Something about this submarine's final mission remained classified even 8 decades later. The breakthrough came when an advanced deep-sea mapping project discovered an anomaly off Norway's northern coast. At a depth of 820 feet, sonar revealed a submarine-shaped object partially buried in the seafloor sediment. Initial data suggested it was a Type 6-7 U-boat, exactly like U-977. What made this discovery particularly unusual was the location, notes Norwegian naval commander Lars Johansen. This area had been extensively surveyed after the war. Finding an undiscovered U-boat here after all these years wasn't just surprising, it was impossible unless someone had deliberately concealed its existence. The Norwegian government quickly assembled a specialized deep-sea archaeological team to investigate the wreck before its location could leak to unauthorized salvagers. Led by Professor Astrid Håkansson of the Norwegian Maritime Museum, the team included technical divers, marine archaeologists, munitions experts, and historical researchers specializing in naval warfare. Our initial assumption was that this might be a previously undocumented German submarine, explains Professor Håkansson. But we were puzzled by certain inconsistencies in the sonar signature that didn't match standard U-boat designs. The descent. The expedition vessel Havforsker positioned itself above the submarine's location on a cold October morning. Weather conditions were ideal. Calm seas with excellent underwater visibility, rare for these northern waters. The team would need every advantage, as the depth put them at the very limits of technical diving capabilities. Even with modern mixed gas rebreathers, our bottom time would be limited to approximately 25 minutes, explains lead diver Erik Larsen. That meant we needed to be extraordinarily efficient with our documentation process. The 4-person primary dive team began their descent at 6:30 a.m. Each diver carried specialized equipment, high-definition cameras with powerful lights, measuring devices, and sample collection tools. Their primary objective was to identify the submarine and document its condition without disturbing the site. The descent itself was breathtaking, recalls Larsen. As we dropped through the water column, it was like traveling back through time. Modern concerns faded away, replaced by a growing sense that we were approaching something profound, a moment frozen in history. At around 700 feet, the submarine's silhouette became visible, a dark shadow lying at an angle on the seafloor. The vessel was partially buried in silt, with its conning tower and forward section exposed. What immediately struck the team was the submarine's remarkably intact condition. Most shipwrecks at these depths show significant deterioration, explains marine archaeologist Sophia Bergström. This submarine looked almost preserved, with minimal coral growth or obvious structural damage. The cold, low-oxygen environment had essentially suspended the normal decay process. As the team approached, they could clearly see the distinctive profile of a Type 6 IC U-boat, but certain modifications were immediately apparent. The conning tower had been altered, with what appeared to be specialized equipment mounts that weren't standard for this class of submarine. Our first clue that this wasn't a typical patrol submarine came from these modifications, notes Bergström. They suggested a specialized mission profile. possibly something experimental. The divers positioned themselves around the submarine, beginning their methodical documentation process. High-resolution photos were taken of identifying markings, while video captured the overall condition and position. Their first objective: locate the submarine's tactical number to confirm its identity. The identification mystery. As the divers circled the conning tower, they found what they were looking for: faint, but still discernible numbers on the submarine's outer hull. But what they saw made no sense. "We expected to find U-977, or perhaps another known U-boat from historical records," says Professor Håkansson. "Instead, we found markings indicating this was U-9771, a designation that doesn't exist in any official documentation." According to all historical records, the highest tactical number assigned to a German submarine was U-4710. This discovery immediately transformed the nature of the expedition. They weren't examining a known submarine with a mysterious fate. They were looking at a vessel that, officially, never existed. The implications were staggering, explains naval historian Dr. Weber. This suggested a completely black operation, a mission so secret that the vessel itself was struck from all records. Even 8 decades after the war, nothing was known about its existence. The team's attention turned to accessing the submarine's interior. Most wrecks at this depth would be too dangerous to enter, but the exceptional preservation of this vessel made limited interior exploration possible. The primary point of entry would be the forward hatch, which appeared to be partially open. "Safety was our paramount concern," emphasizes Larson. "We established strict protocols. Only 2 divers would attempt entry, while the others would maintain positions outside. We would penetrate no more than 10 meters into the submarine, maintaining a continuous guideline to the exit point." Larson and Bergstrom prepared to enter the submarine, while the other team members positioned themselves to provide support and continue external documentation. As the 2 divers approached the hatch, their powerful lights revealed something unexpected. The hatch appeared to have been opened from the inside. "This wasn't a case of the hatch being blown open during a catastrophic event," notes Bergstrom. "The locking mechanism had been deliberately disengaged from the interior. Someone had tried to get out." The first glimpse. Inside. With extreme caution, Larson and Bergstrom maneuvered through the narrow hatch opening. Their entry disturbed decades of fine silt, temporarily reducing visibility to near zero. They remained motionless, allowing the particles to settle while conserving their precious bottom time. As the water cleared, their lights revealed the submarine's control room. Unlike the exterior, which was remarkably preserved, the interior showed signs of a violent incident. Equipment was damaged, with instrument panels torn from walls and debris scattered across the compartment floor. "It looked like either a major structural failure or deliberate sabotage," describes Larson. But there was an odd pattern to the damage. It seemed to radiate outward from a specific point: the entrance to the submarine's cargo hold. What immediately struck both divers was the absence of human remains. A catastrophic event sufficient to cause this level of internal damage would typically result in casualties, yet no bodies were visible in the control room. "This contradicted all our expectations," says Bergstrom. "If the submarine had suffered a catastrophic event killing all hands, we would expect to find remains at their duty stations." The absence of bodies suggested the crew had abandoned their posts before whatever happened occurred. The divers proceeded cautiously toward the cargo hold entrance. The submarine's interior was designed with watertight compartments, separated by pressure doors. The door to the cargo hold was sealed, but showed signs of extreme stress. The metal around its frame was warped and buckled outward, as if subjected to enormous pressure from the inside. "It was like something had tried to force its way out of the cargo hold," recalls Larson, his voice dropping. "The damage pattern was unlike anything I'd seen in decades of wreck diving. We're familiar with what happens when the sea crushes a vessel from outside. This was the opposite, something pushing outward with tremendous force." With their bottom time now half expired, the divers had to make a critical decision. Attempting to open the damaged pressure door was potentially dangerous, but represented their only opportunity to discover what the submarine had been carrying. After a brief communication, they decided to proceed. The door's locking wheel was severely damaged, but with their combined effort, they were able to partially rotate it, with a metallic groan that reverberated through the submarine's hull. The pressure seal broke. The door, however, remained jammed in its frame, opening just enough to allow a narrow view into the space beyond. What they saw through that gap would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The horrifying cargo. The cargo hold had been converted into what appeared to be a sophisticated laboratory. Equipment unfamiliar to the divers lined the walls: strange cylindrical containers, control panels with unfamiliar designs, and what looked like medical examination tables fitted with restraints. But it was what occupied the center of the compartment that caused both divers to recoil in horror. A massive glass tank, partially shattered, dominated the space. Within the remains of this container, barely visible through the murky water, was a form that defied explanation. What at first appeared to be a tangle of cables and organic matter gradually resolved into a more terrifying image: a humanoid figure with devastating anatomical abnormalities. It was approximately 2 meters tall, with a basic human form, but with significant, deliberate modifications, Bergstrom would later report, her voice shaking. The cranium was grossly enlarged and asymmetrical. The limbs showed evidence of surgical alteration, with what appeared to be mechanical components integrated into the organic tissue. More disturbing still was the realization that this wasn't a single specimen. As their lights penetrated the murkiness, they discerned at least 3 more similar figures in the corners of the compartment. Unlike the central specimen, these appeared to have broken free from restraints. Their positions, clustered near the pressure door, suggested they had been attempting to escape the compartment when they died. The implications were nightmarish, admits Dr. Weber. The submarine wasn't simply transporting these specimens. It appears they were created or modified on board. This was a mobile laboratory conducting experimental procedures that violated every ethical principle imaginable. With oxygen reserves now reaching critical levels, the divers had no choice but to retreat. They took as many photographs as possible before beginning their ascent, including close-ups of documents that had been sealed in waterproof containers. Documentation that would provide crucial context to their disturbing discovery. The most difficult part was forcing ourselves to think clinically, to document methodically, when every instinct was screaming at us to flee, recalls Larson. Those final moments in the submarine tested our psychological resilience in ways no previous dive ever had. The classified documents back aboard the Havforsker, the team began the painstaking process of analyzing their findings. The photographs of the waterproof document containers revealed their contents to be a combination of research notes, operational orders, and personal journals. Written in German, they required careful translation by Dr. Weber and other specialists. What emerged was a story more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. The submarine, U-9771, was part of a classified program called Project Uber Mench. Literally, Project Superman, explains Dr. Weber. It was a collaborative effort between the Kriegsmarine and a specialized division of the Ahnenerbe, the SS's ancestral research society. The program's objective was nothing less than the creation of enhanced human subjects capable of operating in environments lethal to normal humans. According to the documents, the project had been initiated in 1943 as Germany's military position deteriorated. Nazi leadership had become increasingly desperate for wonder weapons that could turn the tide of war. While most of these efforts focused on conventional or rocket technology, Project Uber Mench took a more sinister approach: biological enhancement of human subjects. The program selected prisoners from concentration camps, primarily those with scientific or medical backgrounds, continues Dr. Weber, his face grim. They were given a choice: participate in the experiments as researchers, or become subjects themselves. Even for those who chose to become researchers, the distinction eventually blurred. As the project progressed, many researchers were themselves subjected to enhancement procedures when volunteer subjects became scarce. The submarine had been specially modified to serve as both a mobile laboratory and a transport vessel. Its mission, launched in early 1945 as Allied forces closed in on Germany, was to deliver both the research team and their successful subjects to a remote facility in Argentina where the work could continue even after Germany's defeat. What makes this particularly chilling is that the submarine's mission wasn't simply about escaping with valuable research, notes Professor Håkansson. They were actively continuing their experiments during the voyage. The submarine wasn't just transporting monsters, it was creating them while underway. The personal journals of the submarine's scientific director, Dr. Heinrich Berger, revealed the fatal miscalculation that doomed the mission. The enhanced subjects had been kept sedated during the initial phase of the journey. But as medication supplies ran low, the effects began to wear off. The subjects, their bodies and minds warped by the procedures they had endured, regained consciousness, and with it, a terrible awareness of what had been done to them. The final journal entry is essentially a death note, says Dr. Weber. Berger describes the subjects breaking free from their restraints and attacking the research team. The submarine's commander ordered the cargo hold sealed, but by then it was too late. The subjects were attempting to break through the pressure doors into the control room. The journal ends mid-sentence. What happened after remains conjecture, but the physical evidence suggests a desperate scenario. The crew likely scuttled the submarine, choosing to sink rather than face what was breaking through from the cargo hold. The damage patterns inside the vessel support this theory. The violence concentrated around the cargo hold entrance, with the crew seemingly abandoning their stations in the final moments. The ethical dilemma. The discovery presented Norwegian authorities with an unprecedented ethical dilemma. The submarine contained evidence of war crimes, potentially valuable historical information, and human remains that had been horrifically desecrated. Each aspect demanded different, often conflicting responses. Our first responsibility was to treat this site with appropriate reverence, explains Professor Håkansson. Despite the grotesque nature of what was done to them, the modified subjects were victims of atrocity. Their remains deserved dignified treatment. At the same time, the site represented a potential biohazard. The documents indicated the experimental procedures had included introducing non-human genetic material and synthetic compounds into the subjects. After 8 decades underwater, the risk was likely minimal, but could not be dismissed entirely. We consulted with experts in biological safety, historical preservation, and ethics, notes Commander Johansson. The consensus was that limited artifact recovery for documentation purposes was appropriate, but that the submarine itself should remain undisturbed as a gravesite. A second, more specialized expedition was organized. Using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, equipped with precision manipulation tools, the team carefully retrieved key documents and small artifacts that could be safely decontaminated. These items were transported to a secure research facility for analysis under strict quarantine protocols. The human remains, both the modified subjects and crew members found in other compartments during the second exploration, were left in place. The submarine's exact location remains classified to prevent unauthorized disturbance. The broader implications. As analysis of the recovered materials progressed, historians began to understand how this submarine connected to broader patterns of Nazi scientific atrocities. Project Uber Mench appeared to be linked to several known programs, including experiments conducted at Dachau and Ravensbrück concentration camps. What we're seeing is evidence of a more extensive and organized effort than previously documented, explains Dr. Elise Cohen, a historian specializing in Nazi scientific crimes. The conventional understanding has been that most Nazi human experimentation was pseudo-scientific, driven more by sadism than legitimate research methodology. While still profoundly unethical, the documentation from U-9771 suggests a more structured, systematic approach with specific military objectives. The submarine's mission also illuminates a little understood aspect of the immediate post-war period: the race by Allied powers to capture Nazi scientific personnel and research. Operation Paperclip, the American program to recruit German scientists, is well documented. But the U-9771 discovery suggests parallel efforts by the Germans themselves to preserve their research and personnel outside Europe. The submarine was clearly heading to a pre-arranged facility in South America, notes Dr. Weber. This aligns with what we know about rat lines, escape routes used by Nazi officials after the war. But it reveals a more organized effort to continue specific research programs, not just help individuals escape justice. Perhaps most disturbing are the connections to modern scientific capabilities. Some of the genetic modification approaches described in the recovered documents conceptually resemble techniques that only became practical in the 21st century. There's an uncomfortable parallel to contemporary genetic engineering, observes Dr. Cohen. While the Nazi researchers lacked the sophisticated tools we have today, they were asking some of the same fundamental questions about human enhancement. Their methods were brutal and unscientific, but they were probing the boundaries of what defines humanity. The ongoing investigation. The full analysis of materials recovered from U-9771 is expected to take years. An international consortium of historians, ethicists, and scientists has been assembled to process the information and place it in appropriate historical context. Our primary responsibility is to the victims, emphasizes Professor Håkansson. Everything we do must honor their memory and ensure that the atrocities committed are properly documented. This isn't about sensationalizing Nazi-mad science. It's about completing our understanding of how these crimes against humanity were perpetrated. For the divers who first encountered the submarine's horrific cargo, the experience has left lasting psychological impacts. All four have received ongoing counseling to help process what they witnessed. There's a profound difference between intellectually knowing that these atrocities occurred and coming face to face with the physical evidence, reflects Larson. We've all dived on war graves before, but nothing prepares you for encountering victims of human experimentation, preserved as they were in their final moments of agony. The Norwegian government has declared the wreck site a war grave, making it illegal to disturb without explicit authorization. A memorial service was held aboard the Havforsker before the expedition concluded, honoring both the victims of experimentation and the submarine crew who perished with them. In the end, this is a story of human tragedy on multiple levels, concludes Professor Håkansson. The prisoners subjected to inhuman experiments, the researchers who lost their own humanity in conducting them, and the submarine crew caught in the middle of something that spiraled beyond their control. They all became victims of an ideology that placed supposed scientific progress above human dignity. The echoes in the deep. The discovery of U-9771 reminds us that the ocean floor remains one of the last great repositories of hidden history on our planet. Thousands of shipwrecks from World War II still lie undiscovered, each potentially holding pieces of a historical puzzle that remains incomplete. What makes this discovery particularly significant is how it challenges our understanding of what we thought was a thoroughly documented historical period, notes Dr. Weber. If something as substantial as a secret Nazi biological research program could remain hidden for 8 decades, what else might still be waiting to be found? For maritime archaeologists, the technical challenges of exploring such deep-water sites have long limited our ability to discover these hidden chapters of history. But as technology advances, our capacity to reach these depths is expanding. We're entering a new era of deep-water archaeology, explains Professor Håkansson. ROVs and advanced diving equipment are making it possible to systematically explore wrecks that were previously inaccessible. Each discovery has the potential to dramatically reshape our understanding of the past. The U-9771 finding also highlights the ongoing ethical questions surrounding war graves and historical artifacts. While the scientific and historical value of such discoveries is immense, they must be balanced against reverence for the dead and respect for the sites as places of tragedy. These wrecks aren't just time capsules or archaeological sites, emphasizes Commander Johansson. They're the final resting places of human beings who died in terrible circumstances. Our approach must always balance the pursuit of knowledge with appropriate dignity for the dead. As technology continues to advance, more such discoveries are inevitable. Hidden in the abyssal darkness lie answers to historical questions we haven't even thought to ask, and perhaps some answers humanity isn't prepared to face. What other terrible secrets might be hiding in the thousands of undiscovered wrecks scattered across the world's ocean floors? What other classified missions and experimental technologies lie waiting in the darkness? And how might these discoveries change our understanding of history's darkest chapter? The sea keeps its secrets well, but not forever. As we continue to illuminate the ocean depths, we must be prepared for more moments when divers stare in horror at discoveries that challenge our understanding of history and humanity itself. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more shocking historical discoveries. Let us know in the comments what you think about this incredible find, and what other underwater mysteries you'd like us to explore in future videos. The discovery. After centuries of mystery, decades of searching, and countless failed expeditions, the unthinkable has happened. The Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred religious artifact in history, has been discovered beneath Jerusalem's ancient streets. The discovery occurred just 3 days ago, when a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Sarah Levinson was conducting what seemed like a routine excavation near the Temple Mount. What began as a standard archaeological survey transformed into the most significant biblical archaeological find of all time. We were following a network of tunnels that we believed dated to the First Temple period, Dr. Levinson explained, her voice still trembling with emotion. Our ground-penetrating radar had indicated a hollow chamber approximately 40 feet below the surface. We expected to find perhaps a storage room or cistern, certainly not this. The team broke through a thin limestone wall that had been sealed for what experts believe could be over 2,500 years. Behind it lay a chamber roughly 15 feet square, its walls smooth and unmarked. And there, in the center of the room, resting on a stone platform, was an object that matched the biblical description of the Ark of the Covenant with stunning accuracy. The confirmation. The box-like structure measures approximately 4 feet long, 2.5 feet wide, and 2.5 feet high, precisely matching the dimensions described in Exodus 25. It appears to be made of acacia wood overlaid with gold, with 2 golden cherubim figures on its lid, their wings outstretched toward each other. When our lights first illuminated the object, there was complete silence, said Dr. Michael Cohen, a biblical archaeologist who was part of the discovery team. We've all read the descriptions, seen the artistic renderings, but to actually stand in its presence, there are no words. The Israeli Antiquities Authority has assembled an international team of experts to authenticate the find, including metallurgists, historians, religious scholars, and forensic scientists. Preliminary tests have dated the gold to approximately the 10th century BCE, corresponding to the reign of King Solomon when the first temple was constructed. What makes this discovery even more extraordinary is the condition of the Ark. Despite its age, the object shows remarkably little deterioration. The gold remains lustrous, and the wooden structure appears sound. Most astonishingly, the chamber itself shows no signs of disturbance or entry since it was sealed. The preservation is unprecedented, noted Dr. Elizabeth Torres, a conservation specialist called in to assess the find. The chamber's atmosphere appears to have been unusually stable, low humidity, constant temperature, and completely sealed from outside contaminants. It's as if it was deliberately placed here to be preserved for thousands of years. The location. The location of the discovery has sent shockwaves through both archaeological and theological communities. The chamber lies directly beneath an area traditionally associated with the crucifixion of Jesus, the area known as Golgotha. Even more remarkably, directly above the chamber, researchers found a narrow fissure in the bedrock that extends upward to the surface. The geological formation suggests that the crack formed during a major seismic event, consistent with the earthquake described in the Gospel of Matthew at the moment of Jesus' death. The positioning cannot be coincidental, said Dr. Jonathan Weber, a geologist examining the site. This fissure appears to have formed in one catastrophic event. Based on our analysis, it runs directly from what would have been the surface during the Roman period down to the chamber where the Ark rests. This alignment has sparked intense discussion about a potential connection between the Old Testament symbol of God's covenant and the New Testament account of Christ's sacrifice. Some theologians are suggesting that this physical connection between Golgotha and the Ark chamber could represent a literal fulfillment of biblical typology. The evidence. The team has collected samples from the chamber for analysis, including dust particles from the Ark itself and residue from the stone platform beneath it. Most intriguingly, they discovered what appears to be dried blood traces in the fissure and on the lid of the Ark, specifically on the area known as the mercy seat between the cherubim. Initial laboratory analysis of the blood samples has yielded puzzling results that experts are struggling to explain. The genetic material, despite its age, has remained remarkably intact due to the chamber's unique environmental conditions. The blood samples show anomalies that defy conventional explanation, reported Dr. Yasmin Khoury, head of the genetic analysis team. We're observing chromosome patterns that don't conform to standard human genetics. I'm hesitant to make definitive statements until we've completed comprehensive testing. but what we're seeing is unprecedented in my 20 years of genetic research. Religious authorities have been quick to point out that in biblical tradition, the mercy seat of the Ark was the place where blood was sprinkled during atonement rituals, a practice that Christians believe prefigured Christ's sacrificial death. The restrictions. Despite the magnitude of the discovery, access to the site remains severely restricted. The Israeli government, in consultation with religious authorities from multiple faiths, has established a security perimeter around the excavation site. Only a select team of researchers is permitted to enter the chamber, and no photography or video recording has been allowed. "We understand the world's eagerness to see the Ark," said David Rothstein, spokesperson for the Israeli Antiquities Authority. "However, we're dealing with an artifact of immense religious significance to multiple faith traditions. We must proceed with appropriate reverence and caution." This decision has fueled speculation and controversy. Some critics suggest that the restrictions are evidence of a cover-up or exaggeration of the find. Others point to the biblical accounts of the dangerous power associated with the Ark as justification for extreme caution. Dr. Levinson defended the protocols. "Throughout history, the Ark has been described as dangerous when approached improperly. Whether you view that through a spiritual or scientific lens, we're dealing with an object that has been sealed in a unique environment for millennia. Prudence dictates careful handling." The implications. The discovery has profound implications across multiple domains: archaeological, historical, religious, and even geopolitical. For archaeologists and historians, the find provides unprecedented insight into ancient Israelite craftsmanship and religious practices. The existence of the Ark validates certain biblical narratives that some scholars had dismissed as mythological. "This discovery fundamentally changes our understanding of biblical history," said Professor Daniel Hoffman of Hebrew University. "We're not just talking about confirming the existence of an artifact, we're potentially validating an entire historical narrative that forms the foundation of several world religions." Religious communities worldwide have responded with both jubilation and apprehension. For many Jews, Christians, and Muslims, the Ark represents a tangible connection to sacred history and divine revelation. Rabbi Aaron Goldstein of Jerusalem's Great Synagogue described the discovery as the fulfillment of generations of prayer and longing, while acknowledging that it raises complex questions about religious practice and tradition. "The Torah gives specific instructions about the Ark's handling and housing," he noted. "Are we now obligated to restore those practices?" The location of the discovery has sent shockwaves through both archaeological and theological communities. The chamber lies directly beneath an area traditionally associated with the crucifixion of Jesus, the area known as Golgotha. Even more remarkably, directly above the chamber, researchers found a narrow fissure in the bedrock that extends upward to the surface. The geological formation suggests that the crack formed during a major seismic event, consistent with the earthquake described in the Gospel of Matthew at the moment of Jesus' death. "The positioning cannot be coincidental," said Dr. Jonathan Weber, a geologist examining the site. "This fissure appears to have formed in one catastrophic event. Based on our analysis, it runs directly from what would have been the surface during the Roman period down to the chamber where the Ark rests." This alignment has sparked intense discussion about a potential connection between the Old Testament symbol of God's covenant and the New Testament account of Christ's sacrifice. Some theologians are suggesting that this physical connection between Golgotha and the Ark chamber could represent a literal fulfillment of biblical typology. The evidence. The team has collected samples from the chamber for analysis, including dust particles from the Ark itself and residue from the stone platform beneath it. Most intriguingly, they discovered what appears to be dried blood traces in the fissure and on the lid of the Ark, specifically on the area known as the mercy seat between the cherubim. Initial laboratory analysis of the blood samples has yielded puzzling results that experts are struggling to explain. The genetic material, despite its age, has remained remarkably intact due to the chamber's unique environmental conditions. The blood samples show anomalies that defy conventional explanation, reported Dr. Yasmin Khoury, head of the genetic analysis team. "We're observing chromosome patterns that don't conform to standard human genetics. I'm hesitant to make definitive statements until we've completed comprehensive testing, but what we're seeing is unprecedented in my 20 years of genetic research." Religious authorities have been quick to point out that in biblical tradition, The mercy seat of the Ark was the place where blood was sprinkled during atonement rituals, a practice that Christians believe prefigured Christ's sacrificial death. The restrictions. Despite the magnitude of the discovery, access to the site remains severely restricted. The Israeli government, in consultation with religious authorities from multiple faiths, has established a security perimeter around the excavation site. Only a select team of researchers is permitted to enter the chamber, and no photography or video recording has been allowed. "We understand the world's eagerness to see the Ark," said David Rothstein, spokesperson for the Israeli Antiquities Authority. "However, we're dealing with an artifact of immense religious significance to multiple faith traditions. We must proceed with appropriate reverence and caution." This decision has fueled speculation and controversy. Some critics suggest that the restrictions are evidence of a cover-up or exaggeration of the find. Others point to the biblical accounts of the dangerous power associated with the Ark as justification for extreme caution. Dr. Levinson defended the protocols. "Throughout history, the Ark has been described as dangerous when approached improperly. Whether you view that through a spiritual or scientific lens, we're dealing with an object that has been sealed in a unique environment for millennia. Prudence dictates careful handling." The implications. The discovery has profound implications across multiple domains: archaeological, historical, religious, and even geopolitical. For archaeologists and historians, the find provides unprecedented insight into ancient Israelite craftsmanship and religious practices. The existence of the Ark validates certain biblical narratives that some scholars had dismissed as mythological. "This discovery fundamentally changes our understanding of biblical history," said Professor Daniel Hoffman of Hebrew University. "We're not just talking about confirming the existence of an artifact. We're potentially validating an entire historical narrative that forms the foundation of several world religions." Religious communities worldwide have responded with both jubilation and apprehension. For many Jews, Christians, and Muslims, the Ark represents a tangible connection to sacred history and divine revelation. Rabbi Aaron Goldstein of Jerusalem's Great Synagogue described the discovery as the fulfillment of generations of prayer and longing, while acknowledging that it raises complex questions about religious practice and tradition. "The Torah gives specific instructions about the Ark's handling and housing," he noted. "Are we now obligated to restore those practices?